Good morning and welcome to day 48 of the Whole50 Bible study. I can't believe that we are almost finished with this Bible study. I can't believe that you have almost made it through the entire 50 days. If you've been around with us for the entire time, congratulations. Just 2 more days left after today. But if you're joining us, if you joined us somewhere along the journey or just joining us this morning, welcome. It's all right. You've not missed anything. Each of these Bible studies are absolutely self-contained, which means that each and every one of them stand on their own. And the point of all of them is simply to help us find places in the biblical text that will help us grow in our spiritual faith, help us understand Jesus and God a little bit better, and hopefully leave us better than when they found us. Now, today, our topic is Moses. So we are jumping back into the Old Testament, and you can tell clearly by the word epitaph here that this is about death. I guess you can tell that if you knew what the word epitaph means. Epitaph is essentially a few short words written typically on a tombstone or a plaque about someone who has died, but also oftentimes the word epitaph is used metaphorically for final words, final thoughts, remembrances, accomplishments, a bit like an obituary of someone who died. And so that is what is in view here today. We are in the final chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy essentially is Moses' final speech to the people. Moses, who I think could be said as the greatest leader of all time, certainly the greatest leader of Israel, has been made aware that his time is short. And so he has now in the book of Deuteronomy done the final things that he has to do in order for him to pass on. He has put leadership in place after him. He has taught the people a national song, as it were. He has reviewed all of the things that they need to remember and do after him. He has blessed and given a benediction to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And essentially now his time is done. So Deuteronomy 34, actually a lot of the book of Deuteronomy is actually Moses' own words. It's Moses' speech, his farewell speech that he has written out, handed off, and then orally delivered to the people. But here in chapter 34, the final chapter in Deuteronomy, what we have is the narrator stepping back in essentially to voice the obituary or the epitaph for Moses. And it's a very simple read, but it's one that perhaps we oftentimes skip over, because whenever we're in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, we're looking for many times the sensational parts. You're looking for the battles, you're looking for the crazy stuff, looking for the miracles, the stories of giants, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And chapters like this just get overlooked many times. But I find that it's in these particular chapters that we find the most resonance and the most help for where we are and maybe who we want to be. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in to Deuteronomy 34. Then Moses went up to Mount Nebo. Moses goes up to Mount Nebo. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Moses goes up to the top of Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab, and climbed Pisgah Peak, which is across from Jericho. It's across the Jordan River from Jericho. And the Lord showed him the whole land from Gilead as far as Dan, and all the land of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, extending to the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, the Jordan Valley with Jericho, the city of palms as far as Zoar. And so all of this land has essentially been promised for generations to Abraham's family, his children, through Isaac, through Jacob, and then Jacob's 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. And they have waited centuries in order to accomplish this. They were most recently for 500 years in Egypt. and longed to be out of slavery and in this place. And yet, whenever they began the journey to this place, it was so difficult and they became so frustrated and they were so weak of mind and heart that the Israelites wanted to turn and go back to slavery in Egypt and just give up. But God and Moses would not let them. And so now finally they are here. Even after 40 years, 4 decades of wandering in the wilderness, they are knocking on the door of the promised land. And so Moses climbs up to the top of Mount Nebo, which is right on the outskirts of the land, and is able to see all of this territory that has been the stuff of legend, bedtime stories, tales told around campfires for generations and generations and generations. And so to help us see this, I thought maybe I'd just throw up a map very quickly of Israel with some of the high points and key places during this time. And what you see here over on the left, which is not labeled, that light blue space is the Mediterranean Sea. And so you see then 2 other bodies of water in light blue. Up at the top, you see the Sea of Galilee, which is also known as Lake Tiberias if you go to Israel. And then down there at the bottom, you'll see Mount Nebo, which is outlined there in a red block. And then underneath Mount Nebo, you'll see the other and third body of water, the Dead Sea. Now, Egypt is down off the map to the lower left, and off to the right, you'll have the modern day Iran, Pakistan, Jordan, etc., etc., etc. But Mount Nebo right there is that mountain range area that is right there under Heshbon and to the left of Ammon. And then you'll also see Mount Pisgah, which is pointed out. And so from here, you can look to the left, and you would be looking into Canaan, which is also the promised land. And Jericho, which our text mentions, the city there isn't labeled, but Jericho is essentially underneath the word Mount Pisgah, just on the opposite side of the Jordan River. The Jordan River is that line that connects from the top, the Sea of Galilee, that body of water, all the way down to the bottom where Mount Nebo is, and the Dead Sea. So Moses climbs Mount Nebo, where, boy, that is really funny that I keep doing that. Moses climbs Mount Nebo, where he is able to see all of the land which they are about to take once they cross the Jordan River. Now, if you were to climb Mount Nebo today, this is what you'd see. And so this is precisely on top of Mount Nebo what Moses is able to see. And you can see with the modern day map that's there, Moses is able to the left to look and see Hebron and the Dead Sea. He's able, if he looks a little to the right, he's able to see where Bethlehem eventually will be located. He's able to see where Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount will be, where the temple will be built. He's able to see Jericho, which is very close there in the forefront. In fact, you can see over to the right, there's a little road, and just beyond that road, there's a valley, and that valley right there is the Jordan River Valley. And so Jericho is just on the opposite side of that valley. And so Lake Tiberias is even pointed out there on the right side of the map. And if Moses looks over to the right side and the right portion of this view, then he's able to see the Sea of Galilee, which will be home base eventually for Jesus and for the disciples. And most of the stories in the New Testament will take around that sea, which here is labeled Lake Tiberias. And so Moses is able to see all of this as he climbs Mount Nebo. He's able to look into the promised land, but he is, because of his actions earlier in the story, prevented from actually going into the promised land himself. So the Lord says to Moses, as Moses is standing there looking out upon all of this, this is the land that I promised on oath to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And so I'm fulfilling it. I promised it when I said, I will give it to your descendants. God always fulfills his promises. I've now allowed you to see it with your own eyes, but you will not enter the land. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab at the top of Mount Nebo, just as the Lord had said. And here we have the epitaph. And the Lord buried him in a valley near Beth Peor in Moab. But to this day, no one knows the exact place. God himself burying Moses. Moses was 120 years old when he died, which in Egypt would have made him a very important figure. Egypt, numbers were important, and 120 years was essentially thought to be the lifespan of someone who was extremely important, someone who was a part of the royalty of the world and the afterlife. He would have been entering into the afterlife in the eyes of Egyptians with great honor that was due him for having lived a full 120-year life. And so it's interesting that it's 120 years because it gives Moses a level of respect in the ancient world outside of Jewish culture and Israelite culture. His eyesight was clear. Don't we all wish that we could say that? And he was as strong as ever. The people of Israel mourned for Moses on the plains of Moab for 30 days until the customary period of mourning was over. Now Joshua, son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the people of Israel obeyed him, doing just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And so essentially now here there is a handoff from Moses to Joshua, and we will pick up the story if you were to continue reading in the next book with the story of Joshua and the people now entering the promised land that Moses is not able to enter. It's interesting to me, though, sometimes I look at Joshua and I think, really? Did you deserve this? Moses has, for 40 years, plus the time in Egypt, set up all that is about to happen in the next chapter. And doesn't get to lead through it or even experience it. It's Joshua. It doesn't seem fair, does it? It doesn't seem fair that Moses has done all of this work, that he has endured all of this chaos. And if you read back through Moses leading these people, they were terrible. They were terrible to him. There are moments literally where Moses prays, God, kill me because these people are so awful. Moses endures all of it. And yet, Joshua's the one who gets to experience it. It just doesn't seem fair. In fact, if you read Joshua was by many standards a great leader, but Joshua was never the leader that Moses was. And in some ways, Joshua is even a failure because at the end of his leadership, Joshua fails to do what Moses did, and that is to hand off well to somebody else who had been trained. And so Joshua does not, in many ways, do what Moses is able to do, which is hand off well, which I think is a lesson for us in that perhaps your greatest accomplishment may well be the success of somebody else. We don't like to think this way, especially in the United States of America, because we like to think that the world centers around us, not just as Americans. Even the fact that we call ourselves Americans when half the world is American, North America, South America, Canada, Brazil, Chile, all of these places, Guatemala, all these people are Americans. They all live in the Americas. But we call ourselves here in the United States Americans, as though people from Mexico are not Americans, as though people from Brazil are not Americans, as though people from Canada are not Americans. They are, because we think that the world revolves around us in America. And we think that the world revolves around us as individuals. And so we don't like the thought. In fact, we push it away and don't even contemplate it. We don't like the thought that maybe our greatest accomplishment is somebody else. That somebody else is going to be a success because we have laid a whole bunch of groundwork quietly. Now, Moses didn't lay groundwork quietly. Moses was great, and Moses was seen as being greater than Joshua. But Moses didn't get to experience all of the success that he had set for decades in place to happen. Maybe part of Moses' success and honor is because he laid the groundwork well. And I think for us, we have to wrestle with the fact that maybe we're not meant to be the hero out front doing all the accomplishments. Maybe for some of us, or for some seasons in our life, our greatest gift to the kingdom of God, to others, to our legacy, is to recognize that we may well simply be the person who's paving the way for someone else. John the Baptist, his sole life's purpose was to pave the way for Jesus. And maybe yours is as well. Even the great Moses, that was his role. And here at the end of his epitaph, and there's another verse or two, but I think we'll stop here for today. The narrator makes this statement. That's powerful. There's never been another prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He lived to 120 years, which in the eyes of Egyptians and many people in that time period would have said brought him great honor and great respect, meant that he was a great person whom was deserving of honor and glory and all of the accolades that can be given. But could anything ever be said better than this? That there has never been another greater one, the one whom the Lord knew face to face. There will be many things written and said about all of us whenever we pass. No matter how unknown or insignificant you may feel, there will be things said and written about you. In fact, they already are. But the final words, they will come as well. My hope and my prayer, not just for me, but my hope and my prayer for you as well, is that it may be said of you in so many words that there's never been another one greater. In whatever God has called you to, God called Moses to being a prophet, and it was said of him, there's never been another one like him. And whatever God has called you to, parenting, employment, whatever it may be that God has called you to, may it well be said that there has never been another one like you, one whom knew God face to face. Work towards that. And I don't think you're going to regret the life that you live. Till tomorrow.